High Councillor HFY of the Galactic Council couldn't contain their amusement, their crystalline form shimmering with barely suppressed laughter. The holographic display rotating in the center of the vast chamber showed what had to be the most pathetic excuse for a space fleet they'd seen in their 300 cycles of service. And these they managed between chuckles, gesturing at the display with one of their prismatic appendages, are what the humans consider their primary defense force. The massive chamber, carved from living crystal and spanning nearly a kilometer in diameter, erupted in various forms of alien laughter. The MRS representatives chittered, their fur rippling in waves of amusement. The gaseous cloud-born pulsed in rapid, pink formations, their species equivalent of pointing and laughing. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. His ceremonial uniform, midnight blue with silver trim, seemed almost plain compared to the biological and mechanical grandeur surrounding him. The human didn't fidget, didn't protest, didn't even blink as the council members continued their assessment. "Look at the size of their flagship," General K. Throk of the Warmind Collective boomed, his cybernetic eye zooming in on the largest human vessel. "It's barely the size of our standard patrol craft. How do they even fit a proper weapon system in there?" "Perhaps they use very small ammunition," suggested Queen Administrator NX of the Hive Concordat, her mandibles clicking in amusement. The joke set off another round of laughter. Chen Wei cleared his throat. The sound, though quiet, somehow carried across the chamber. "If I may, honored council members," his voice was calm, measured, carrying just a hint of something that made several of the more experienced diplomats pause. High Councillor HFY waved a crystalline limb magnanimously. "Of course, Ambassador. Please explain to us how this modest collection of vessels qualifies your species for full council membership. The regulations are quite clear. All member species must be capable of contributing to the collective defense of galactic space." "Thank you." High Councillor Chen Wei stepped forward, his movements deliberate. "I notice the council seems particularly focused on the size of our fleet. I'm curious, have any of you ever heard the human phrase, 'good things come in small packages'?" The universal translator struggled for a moment with the idiom, producing a variety of confused expressions across the chamber. Or perhaps Chen Wei continued, that same slight smile never wavering, "You're familiar with the story of David and Goliath?" "No? Well, then," he gestured to the holographic display. "What you see before you is the culmination of 300 years of human innovation. We call it the compact fleet." The Warmind general scoffed, servos whirring. "Compact is certainly the word for it. The entire fleet would fit in one of our carrier bays." "How fascinating," Chen Wei replied, and something in his tone made the cybernetic warrior's organic eye narrow. "You know, there's another human saying that seems relevant here, judge not by appearances alone." The cloud-born representative, Ambassador Wisp, swirled forward. "We have reviewed the technical specifications your government provided. While your ships show some interesting design choices, they simply lack the mass and power output to be considered a serious military force." Chen Wei nodded. "You've reviewed our submitted specifications. Tell me, honored council members, in your species' histories, when preparing for conflict, did you make a habit of revealing all of your capabilities to potential adversaries?" The chamber grew noticeably quieter. "Not that we consider the council adversaries, of course," Chen Wei added smoothly, "simply making an observation about strategic disclosure. But perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than technical documents." High Councillor HFY's crystalline form stopped shimmering with mirth, taking on a more serious, deep blue hue. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" Chen Wei's smile finally reached his eyes. "I understand there's been some trouble with pirates in the Outer Rim, the Magellan sector specifically. How long has the Council been attempting to address that situation?" The silence in the chamber grew deeper as the Council members exchanged glances. The Magellan pirates had been a growing embarrassment for nearly 2 cycles, resisting all attempts at containment. "You're offering to help?" Queen Administrator NX asked, her previous amusement replaced by skepticism. "Oh no," Chen Wei replied. "We're offering to solve the problem. Completely. With our tiny fleet that you find so amusing. Unless, of course, the Council would prefer to continue its current approach." The human's words hung in the air like a challenge, and suddenly nobody was laughing anymore. Senior Scout Zar Lak of the Zaxian Exploration Corps remembered the first contact with humans all too well. As the council chamber buzzed with quiet discussions about the human ambassador's bold claim, his mind drifted back to that day, 5 cycles ago. "Captain," "We've detected artificial structures in Sector 47B," his sensor operator had reported, multiple tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. Definitely not natural formations. The discovery had been routine, just another primitive species taking its first steps into space. The Zaxian vessel, nearly 3 kilometers long and equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology in known space, had settled into a high orbit around the third planet of the system. Record everything Zarlak had ordered. Standard first contact protocol. What they saw had been underwhelming. A handful of orbital stations, chunky and inelegant. A scattering of lunar bases that looked like they'd been cobbled together from spare parts. And the ships, if you could call them, that were tiny boxes that puttered between planets, using the most primitive form of fusion drive they'd seen in decades. "Are you certain these readings are accurate?" he'd asked his science officer. "Triple-checked, sir. Their most advanced weapons appear to be chemical projectiles and basic energy weapons. Nothing that could penetrate even our lowest-grade shields." The subsequent report to the Galactic Council had been brief and dismissive. Species shows minimal spacefaring capability. Limited understanding of fundamental physics. Recommend classification as minor species, development level 3. Then the humans had surprised them by achieving faster-than-light travel barely 2 cycles later. Impossible, the Zaxian High Command had declared when the reports came in. "Our analysis showed they were at least 50 cycles away from that breakthrough." But the humans hadn't stopped there. They'd expanded rapidly, establishing colonies and trading posts across their local sector. Yet their ships remained small, their fleet modest. The Galactic Defense Forces analysis team had spent months studying the human vessels. "Look at these design choices," Admiral VX Tix had sneered during the briefing. "They're not even trying to maximize weapons coverage. No redundant shield generators. Minimal point defense systems. And the power output readings are laughably low." The Council had maintained the humans' minor species classification, even after they petitioned for membership. The official report had cited insufficient military capability and limited technological advancement as primary reasons. Zarlak shifted uncomfortably in his observer's seat as he watched Ambassador Chen Wei. There was something about the human's confidence that bothered him. He'd seen that same quiet assurance in other humans during his subsequent observation missions. He remembered one particular encounter that had stuck with him. His ship had been tracking a human mining vessel, watching their inefficient extraction methods with professional disdain. A warning light had flashed a micrometeoroid storm approaching. The human ship was right in its path, and their sensors were obviously too primitive to have detected it. Zarlak had been prepared to break protocol and warn them, but before he could, the supposedly primitive human ship had changed. Panels had shifted, revealing hidden equipment. The vessel had erected a deflection field more elegant than anything he'd seen before, and the meteoroids had scattered harmlessly around it. Then, as if nothing had happened, the panels had closed, and the ship resumed its seemingly crude operations. He'd left that detail out of his report. Who would have believed him? Now, watching the human ambassador stand calmly before the council, Zarlak couldn't shake the feeling that they'd all missed something important. The human ship designs defied conventional logic unless you assumed they were seeing exactly what the humans wanted them to see. High Counselor, he found himself speaking up, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Perhaps we should consider." But before he could finish, the emergency alert system blared to life. The Magellan Sector's defensive coordinator appeared in the central hologram, their expression grim. "Honored Council. The pirate fleet has launched a major offensive. 3 trading hubs are under attack. Our response forces they're being overwhelmed." Zarlak watched as Ambassador Chen Wei's slight smile grew just a fraction wider. "Well," the human said softly, "what fortunate timing." The council chamber erupted into chaos as the holographic display filled with tactical data. The Magellan Sector's trade routes blazed red with warning indicators, pirate vessels swarming like locusts across the shipping lanes. 17 capital ships confirmed, the defense coordinator reported, their voice tight with stress. "They've somehow bypassed our early warning systems. The Hive Concordat's 3rd Fleet is already engaged, but..." They hesitated. "They're taking heavy losses." Queen Administrator NX's antennae twitched violently. The Hive Concordat's 3rd Fleet was one of the most powerful fighting forces in the sector. "How is this possible?" "The pirates appear to have acquired next-generation shield technology," the coordinator continued. "Our weapons are barely making a dent. They've already captured 6 merchant vessels and, by the void, they're attacking the Starbridge terminal." The Starbridge terminal was the sector's primary trade hub, home to over 3 million beings. If it fell, the economic damage would ripple across half the galaxy. The Warmind Collective's battle group is responding, General K. Throck announced, his cybernetic implants glowing fierce red. Time to arrival 43 minutes. The terminal will be lost by then. High Councillor Zixvac's crystalline form had taken on a sickly yellow hue. Where are the cloud-born interceptors? All blocked by some kind of gravitational disturbance, Ambassador Wisp swirled anxiously. We cannot reach the combat zone. Chen Wei cleared his throat again, that same quiet sound somehow cutting through the pandemonium. The compact fleet is already in position. Every alien eye, sensor and sensory apparatus in the chamber turned to stare at him. Impossible, General K. Throck growled. Your ships were in Earth's orbit less than an hour ago, even with your fastest drives. Oh, those weren't our fastest drives, Chen Wei interrupted politely. As I mentioned earlier, technical specifications can be misleading. Now about that permission to intervene. High Councillor Zixvac's crystalline surface rippled with indecision. Your ships are barely armed. You'll be destroyed. I'll take that as a yes, Chen Wei smiled, touching a small device on his wrist. Compact Fleet Command, you are authorized to engage. Protocol Mongoose is now active. The holographic display shifted to show the battle zone. The pirate fleet was arranged in a classic attack formation, their massive ships pressing their advantage against the failing Hive Concordat forces. The Starbridge terminal loomed in the background, its defense screens already flickering. And then, appearing like dust motes against the vast backdrop of space, came the human ships. Are they serious? Someone in the chamber whispered. Those vessels are tiny. They were. The largest human ship was barely visible on the tactical display, looking like a child's toy next to the kilometer-long pirate dreadnoughts. The pirates seemed to share this assessment. Their formation didn't even adjust to account for the new arrivals. Why waste energy repositioning to deal with such an insignificant threat? This is Commander Reza Patel of the Compact Fleet. A new voice came through the command channel. To all civilian vessels, please adjust your transponder frequencies to match the following pattern. This is going to get a bit chaotic. Before anyone could question this unusual request, the human ships began to move. But they didn't move like ships. They moved like dancers. What in the void? General K. Throck leaned forward, his cybernetic eye whirring as it tried to track the patterns. Those maneuvers should be tearing those ships apart. The human vessels wove through space in impossible ways, their formations shifting like quicksilver. They flowed around enemy fire as if they could predict exactly where each shot would go. Compact Fleet. Execute Origami Protocol. Commander Patel's voice was almost cheerful. And then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, the human ships began to unfold. Panels shifted, sections rotated, and what had appeared to be simple transport vessels transformed into configurations that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Weapons emerged from seemingly nowhere, energy signatures spiked to impossible levels, and each tiny ship suddenly possessed enough firepower to threaten a capital ship. By the first light, Ambassador Wisp pulsed in shock. They're not ships at all. They're Swiss Army knives, Chen Wei supplied helpfully. Another human term you might want to look up later. The pirates, finally realizing their mistake, tried to reorganize their formation. But the human ships were already among them, moving with a speed and precision that made the other race's best pilots look clumsy in comparison. Their shield technology is impressive, Commander Patel commented casually over the channel. Mind if we borrow it? Before anyone could process this bizarre question, the human ships released swarms of what looked like mechanical insects. They attached themselves to the pirate vessel's shield generators and began to rewrite their operating protocols in real time. A little trick we learned from studying viral evolution, Chen Wei explained to the stunned council. Very educational nature. Within minutes, the pirates' supposedly impenetrable shields began failing. Within 10 minutes, half their fleet was disabled. Within 15 minutes, it was over. The council chamber was absolutely silent as they watched the human ships fold back into their unassuming configurations, looking once again like simple, undersized vessels. Situation resolved, Commander Patel reported. Minimal civilian casualties, all merchant vessels secured. Oh, and we took the liberty of upgrading the Starbridge terminal's defensive systems while we were here. You're welcome. High Councillor Zixvac turned their crystalline form toward Chen Wei, all traces of condescension gone. Ambassador, they said carefully, I believe the Council may need to revise its assessment of your species' capabilities. Oh, Chenwei replied, looking for all the world like someone discussing the weather. What gave you that idea? What the blazes are those humans doing? Captain Drek Thor of the pirate dreadnought Blood Harvest growled, watching the approaching human vessels with a mixture of amusement and confusion. The tiny ships were moving in what appeared to be a spiral pattern, completely exposing their flanks. Sir, they're broadcasting. Dance music, his communications officer reported, bafflement evident in all four of her eyes. The humans had arranged their fleet into what looked like a double helix formation, their ships spinning around each other in perfect synchronization. The effect was almost hypnotic, their supposedly primitive engines leaving trails of blue plasma that formed intricate patterns in the void. Are they mocking us? Drek Thor's tentacles curled in anger. Target the lead vessel. Let's show them what real warfare looks like. The Blood Harvest's main cannon charged, its crystalline focusing array gathering enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The beam lanced out, a perfect shot that would slice the human ship in half. Except it didn't. The human vessel performed what could only be described as a ballet twirl, the deadly beam passing harmlessly through the space it had occupied milliseconds before. The ship continued its spinning motion, as if nothing had happened, still perfectly in sync with its companions. Impossible, Drek Thor's weapons officer breathed. Nothing can move that fast. The G-forces alone should have. Would you like to know how we did that? A cheerful human voice cut across all comm channels. The secret is in the music. You see, we found that coordinating fleet movements to rhythmic patterns increases response time by 47%. Plus, it's just more fun this way. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander Zhang Wei of the human vessel Tiny Dancer. As he spoke, his ship executed another impossible maneuver, somehow managing to be exactly where the Blood Harvest point defense systems weren't firing. Oh, and about those fancy shields you stole, Zhang continued, his ship now practically skating across the pirate vessel's hull. Did you actually read the user manual? No? Shame. Allow us to demonstrate some of the more interesting features. The human ships suddenly broke their dance-like formation, each vessel splitting apart like the petals of a blooming flower. What had appeared to be simple hull plating reconfigured into arrays of weapons that defied conventional physics. By the void, Drek Thor's science officer whispered, "They're not weapons, they're reality manipulation devices." She was right. The human ships weren't firing conventional energy weapons or projectiles. Instead, they were literally rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas around the pirate vessels. A section of the Blood Harvest's hull simply ceased to exist as the space it occupied decided to take a brief vacation to another dimension. Another patch of hull aged 10,000 years, in an instant, crumbling to dust. A third section found itself suddenly occupying the same space as its neighbor, with predictably catastrophic results. You know what your biggest mistake was? Zhang asked conversationally as his ship danced through the chaos. Besides the piracy, obviously, it was assuming that size equals capability. We humans learned a long time ago that efficiency is far more important than mass. As if to demonstrate this point, one of the smaller human vessels, barely the size of a shuttle, approached a pirate heavy cruiser. Its hull rippled, and suddenly it had sprouted what looked like mechanical tendrils made of pure energy. We call this one the jellyfish maneuver, Zhang explained helpfully as the tendrils wrapped around the cruiser, inspired by Earth's marine life. Amazing what you can learn from evolution, isn't it? The cruiser's shields, designed to repel energy weapons and physical projectiles, had no defense against weapons that technically didn't exist in normal space-time. The tendrils phased through the barriers, as if they weren't there, wrapping around key systems and simply unmaking them. This is impossible, Drek Thor roared, watching his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled by ships he could barely see on his tactical display. What are you? Oh, we're just humans, Zhang replied cheerfully. But we're humans who grew up reading science fiction. Do you know what that means? It means we spent centuries imagining all the cool things we could do with technology before we actually had it. By the time we developed the capability, we already knew exactly what we wanted to build. Another human ship pirouetted through space, its hull flowing like liquid metal as it adapted to each new tactical situation. It passed through a pirate battleship's engine wake, and instead of being damaged by the plasma exhaust, it somehow absorbed the energy and used it to power what appeared to be a localized time dilation field. Sir Drek Thor's tactical officer reported, hysteria creeping into his voice, "They're not just defeating us, they're rewriting our ship's operating systems. They're teaching our ships to dance. True enough, several of the captured pirate vessels had begun moving in sync with the human fleet, their massive bulk somehow managing to keep time with the continuing stream of Earth music. We find that ships are happier when they can express themselves creatively, Zhang noted. You really should treat your vessels better. They're not just tools, you know, they're partners. The battle, if it could even be called that anymore, had become less of a military engagement and more of a demonstration of exactly how many laws of physics humans could break simultaneously while maintaining perfect musical timing. Now, about those stolen shield generators, Zhang's voice took on a slightly more serious tone. We're going to need those back. But since you went to all the trouble of field testing them for us, we're willing to be generous. Surrender now and we'll teach you the proper way to use them. Keep fighting and, well, I believe the next song on our battle playlist is Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, and trust me, you don't want to see what our ships do during the crescendo. Drek Thor, watching as another section of his flagship decided to temporarily exist as a quantum probability wave rather than solid matter, made the wisest decision of his piratical career. We surrender, he announced, all four arms raised in submission. Just, please stop making our ships dance. Excellent choice, Zhang sounded genuinely pleased. Now, who would like to learn about the fascinating relationship between quantum entanglement and the Cha-Cha slide? Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Chen Wei watched the tactical display with that same slight smile. You know, he mentioned to no one in particular, we haven't even shown them our actual weapons yet. These are just our testing protocols. The silence that followed this statement was profound enough to bend light. 2 days after the battle, the council chamber had been converted into an impromptu lecture hall. Commander Reza Patel stood where Ambassador Chen Wei had previously faced ridicule, but now every council member leaned forward with rapt attention. The fundamental problem, Patel explained, manipulating a holographic representation of a human vessel, is that everyone assumes space is rigid. It's not. Space is more like a piece of fabric, and if you know how to fold it properly, you can fit an awful lot in a very small package. The hologram showed one of their ships transforming, but this time in slow motion. What had appeared to be a simple hull plate unfolded into an impossible number of layers, each one containing systems that by all rights shouldn't have fit in the original volume. We call it TARDIS engineering, Patel continued, grinning at his own joke. Though technically the proper term is compressed space technology. Think of it like those robot toys that fold into vehicles, except we're folding space itself. General Cathrock's organic eye twitched. But the energy requirements would be astronomical using conventional physics, Patel nodded. That's why we don't use conventional physics. We cheat. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to show the internal structure of a human engine core. See, we discovered that universe has certain shortcuts. Loopholes, if you will. For instance, did you know that if you fold space in exactly the right way, you can make a power generator that's technically inside its own output? Queen Administrator NX's antennae went completely rigid. That's impossible. The paradox would only exists if you assume time flows in one direction, Patel interrupted. We find it works better if you treat time more like a suggestion than a rule. Our engineers have a saying, the laws of physics are more like guidelines anyway. The hologram shifted again, showing the modular nature of human ship design. Each component was a self-contained unit that could operate independently or combine with others in virtually unlimited configurations. Originally, we built our ships this way because it was cheaper, Patel admitted. Why build 10 different ships when you can build one ship that becomes 10 different ships? But then we realized something interesting. If each module is quantum entangled with its neighbors, you can reconfigure the entire ship instantly, Ambassador Wisp pulsed in sudden understanding. That's how you achieve those impossible maneuvers. Partly, Patel nodded. The other part is our AI systems. Not artificial intelligence that's too limiting. We prefer actual intelligence. Each ship has what we call a quantum neural network. It's not programmed, it's grown. We seed it with basic protocols and let it evolve in accelerated time simulations. He brought up a new display showing the neural patterns of a ship's consciousness. The council chamber filled with gasps and murmurs. That's not possible, High Councillor Zixvak's crystalline form flickered in distress. Those patterns, they're identical to organic brain activity. Better, actually, Patel corrected. Organic brains are limited by chemical reaction speeds. Our ships think at the speed of quantum tunneling. They're not just fast, they're processing possibilities before they even happen. The display showed a battle simulation where human ships appeared to react to threats before they occurred. The best part, Patel continued, clearly enjoying himself. The ships talked to each other, all the time. Every battle maneuver you saw wasn't just choreographed, it was a collective improvisation. 17 ships thinking as one, each contributing to a battle plan that evolved moment by moment. And the music, someone asked weakly. Oh, that was just for fun, Patel grinned. The ships enjoy it. Helps them get in the right mood. The council chamber had grown very quiet. The implications were staggering. Every human ship was essentially a pocket universe unto itself, crewed by an evolved AI that could rewrite physics on a whim, all coordinated by a quantum network that operated outside normal time. There's one thing I don't understand, General Throck said finally. If you have this technology, why do you need council membership? Patel's expression grew serious for the first time. Because we're explorers, not conquerors. We could have swept through this galaxy like a force of nature. Instead, we chose to come as equals, to learn and share knowledge. Our ships might bend reality, but our hearts, they're still very human. He paused, then added with a slight smile, besides, do you have any idea how boring it is being the only ones who can do this stuff? We want to share. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Your biological engineering, combined with our space manipulation. Your energy weapons, augmented by our quantum systems. The possibilities are endless. The council members looked at each other, a mix of terror and excitement on their various faces. They had laughed at the tiny human fleet, only to discover that humanity had essentially turned their ships into something between gods and artists. Although Patel added casually, maybe we should start with something simple. Who wants to learn how to make their ships do the Macarena? One standard month after the Battle of Magellan's Sector, the Galactic Council convened their final vote on human membership. The chamber, once filled with mockery, now hummed with anticipation. High Councillor HFY floated at the central podium, their crystalline form glowing with formal purple hues as they read the official battle report. Final casualty count from the pirate engagement: 0 civilian deaths, 0 allied military casualties, no permanent structural damage to any council installations, total economic impact. They paused for effect was actually positive due to the improved efficiency of the upgraded defense systems. The council members shifted uncomfortably, remembering their previous dismissive attitudes. Several of them had personally apologized to Ambassador Chen Wei, who had accepted each apology with that same enigmatic smile. Furthermore, HFY continued, the captured pirate vessels, once convinced to stop dancing, have provided invaluable intelligence about criminal operations across 3 sectors. The recovered technology has been returned to its rightful owners, with significant improvements that the humans assure us are just basic upgrades. General Throck, whose cybernetic systems had recently been enhanced by human quantum computing principles, spoke up. The military implications cannot be ignored. One human vessel contains more tactical flexibility than an entire traditional battle fleet, and they have thousands of these ships. 17,423, to be exact. Chen Wei offered helpfully from his position on the chamber floor. Though that number might be different by now. The ships do enjoy reproducing when they get bored. The chamber erupted in confused muttering. Ambassador Wisp swirled forward anxiously. They reproduce. Of course, Chen Wei nodded. Once they reach full consciousness, it seems rather cruel to deny them the right to create new life. Though we did have to establish some guidelines after the incident with the von Neumann probes and the self-replicating dance party. Queen Administrator NX's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. And yet, despite this power, you continue to present yourselves modestly. Your ships maintain their small size, even though they could clearly be much larger. Chen Wei's eyes twinkled. But that's the beautiful part, isn't it? Size truly doesn't matter. What matters is how creatively you use what you have. Humanity learned long ago that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes the most elegant solution is the smallest one. He gestured to the holographic display which showed the current human fleet deployment. Thousands of tiny dots, each one representing a ship that could casually rewrite the laws of physics. Besides, he added, do you know how much easier it is to park a small ship? Traffic around Earth is bad enough already. The joke sparked scattered laughter, genuine this time, not mocking. The council members had learned to appreciate human humor, especially after discovering how much of their technology was based on what humans called crazy ideas we had while watching old science fiction shows. High Councillor HFY raised their primary appendage for attention. The vote before us today is not just about military capability. It is about wisdom. The humans have shown us that true strength lies not in size or apparent power, but in innovation, efficiency, and most importantly, restraint. They turned to face Chen Wei directly. You could have dominated us. Instead, you chose to join us, to share your knowledge, to make us laugh, even as you demonstrated power that our greatest scientists are still struggling to comprehend. Well, Chen Wei shrugged modestly. Making friends is a lot more fun than making enemies. Though I should warn you, once you let humans start helping with your technology, we can get a bit enthusiastic. Commander Patel is already drawing up plans for something he calls galaxy-wide dance revolution. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Humanity was welcomed into the Galactic Council with full honors, their small fleet officially recognized as one of the most powerful forces in known space. As the chamber erupted in celebration, Tsar Lak of the Zaxian Exploration Corps approached Chen Wei. You knew, didn't you? That day when I first observed your ships, you knew we were watching. Of course, Chen Wei nodded. Just like we knew about the other 17 observation missions, we thought it was adorable how sneaky everyone was trying to be. Our ships made up little stories about which cloaked vessel was following them each day. Tsar Lak's sensory tentacles curled in embarrassment. And you let us believe that we were primitive. Underestimated? A tiny, harmless fleet. Chen Wei's smile widened. Let me share one final human saying with you. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. He patted the mortified Zaxian on one appendage. Now, would you like to learn how to make your ships moonwalk? I hear it's becoming quite popular in the outer sectors. High above them, in the space around the council station, the tiny human ships continued their endless dance through the stars, humming quantum songs to themselves and occasionally teaching the laws of physics new choreography.